I set off on my motorcycle journey on 15th of August 2025, departing from Gera in Germany, a place I have called home for some time now. The plan was ambitious, to ride across half of Europe and return with panniers full of impressions, stories, and hard-earned experience. The route I had mapped out led through the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania, then further south into Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, Greece, back into Albania, and onward through Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, and finally back to Germany. It was meant to be a long and demanding journey, but above all, an unforgettable adventure. Even before setting off, I got in touch with a fellow rider, Marius, through one of the motorcycle groups on Facebook. One conversation led to another, and it turned out he would join me for the entire journey. Another mate, Zbigniew, also wanted to get a taste of the expedition and decided to come along as well. Due to his commitments, however, he could only spare the first few days. In the end, he rode with us all the way to Romania before heading back home. The first kilometers through the Czech Republic and Slovakia passed calmly, but without any major highlights. I was riding mostly on motorways, so there was little worth filming. It was only upon reaching Budapest that I finally took out the camera and began recording the first shots for this film. Budapest welcomed me with beautiful weather and stunning architecture. I managed to capture several great shots, especially of the majestic Parliament building reflected in the waters of the Danube. It is one of those places you simply cannot ride past without stopping. After a night spent at a campsite outside Budapest, I set off towards Oradea in Romania, where I was due to meet Marius and Zbigniew. The route between Budapest and Oradea is made up mostly of motorways, a straight, fast stretch of road. It was another section that simply wasn't worth filming. Just riding, riding, and more riding, with nothing that would really belong in the film. After arriving in Oradea, I headed straight to the campsite I had chosen earlier. The very first thing I did was pitch my tent. I wanted to have a proper base set up before Marius arrived. Once everything was in place and my backpack was stowed inside, I still had a bit of time to spare, so I decided to head out for a short walk and explore the town. Oradea turned out to be a genuinely pleasant place. Colorful townhouses, quiet streets, and a distinct atmosphere that blends something of both the West and the East. The walk allowed me to reset after the ride, stretch my legs, and finally feel that the journey was truly beginning. It was here that I waited for Marius to arrive, knowing that from this point on, we would be setting off further together. Marius and I spent the night in Oradea at the campsite, each of us in our own tent. After a full day on the road, being able to lie down in the fresh air and properly rest was genuinely pleasant. Zbigniew had different plans. As it turned out, he hadn't brought a sleeping bag with him, so camping was out of the question. He decided to find accommodation in town and spend the night there in far more comfortable conditions. The next morning, we all agreed to meet at a nearby gas station. It was there that we were together for the first time. 3 riders, ready to head further into Romania's roads. After a quick coffee, some refueling, and exchanging a few words about the plan, we set off southward. The initial stretch of the road was nothing to write home about. A regular route, calm scenery, nothing spectacular. But everything changed the moment we turned onto Road 108K. That's where the real magic began. Winding curves, shifting landscapes, and mountain panoramas. Romania suddenly showed exactly why it's worth visiting by motorcycle. The route became not just interesting, but truly spectacular. It was the moment we started to feel that the real adventure was only just getting underway. Riding further along the scenic 108K, we finally reached one of the most striking spots on the entire route. the artificial lake Lacul Dragan. Even at first glance, it was clear that this was no ordinary mountain reservoir. The vast expanse, the surrounding peaks, and the imposing dam wall made you feel truly tiny in comparison. Lacul Dragan, also known as Barajul Dragan Floroiu, is nestled in the heart of the western Romanian Carpathians, in the Vlădeasa Mountains. This was one of those stops where each of us fell silent for a moment. We simply stood there, gazing and soaking in the view. Once again, Romania showed that it can astonish you in the places you least expect. After a brief stop at Lacul Dragan, where we took a few photos, we set off towards the next point on our route. Our destination was the famous Salina Turda salt mine, one of the most extraordinary places in all of Romania. We were guided by the Kalimodo app, so the road, as is often the case, turned out to be remarkably varied. Instead of the usual wide highways, we found ourselves on narrow, winding stretches, sometimes cutting through dense forests, at other times passing through small villages where time seemed to flow differently. There were climbs, descents, curves, and even sections that made you wonder whether it was still a road or a test of your motorcycling skills. Halfway along the route, hunger caught up with us, so we stopped at a small, unassuming roadside food stall. As it turned out, they were serving traditional placenta, Romanian flatbreads, accompanied by sour cream. Simple, rustic cooking, but absolutely delicious. A crispy crust, soft interior, and fresh, thick cream had each of us eating in silence, focused entirely on what was on our plates. It was a small culinary highlight of the day, completely unexpected, yet memorable for a long time. Refueled and in high spirits, we continued on towards Salina Turda, ready for the next wave of experiences. At first, we rode through mountain switchbacks, surrounded by dense forests, with a new view waiting around every bend. Sometimes a steep slope, other times a narrow stream running right alongside the road. The motorcycles ran smoothly, and the ride was pure enjoyment. Gradually, the terrain opened up, and we entered wide, green valleys, dotted with small farms and tranquil villages spaced every few kilometers. Kalimodo mercilessly led us to the most interesting curves, so one moment we were riding on perfectly smooth asphalt, and the next we were on narrow country lanes that felt more like farm tracks than official roads. But it was precisely these little surprises that gave the journey its character. As we drew closer to Turda, the landscape became increasingly urban. Traffic thickened, small roundabouts appeared, along with local shops, gas stations, and the characteristic Romanian buildings. It was precisely at this point, in the final kilometers before the mine, that the weather began signaling that the day was far from over. At first, a few scattered drops fell, the kind you could normally ignore, but soon there were more. The rain was light, yet enough to make the asphalt glisten and fill the air with the scent of moisture and a summer storm. It wasn't a downpour, more like a quiet reminder that in the mountains, the weather changes faster than a turn signal at a roundabout. Still, we reached Salina Turda without difficulty, a little damp, but brimming with curiosity about what awaited us underground. Upon entering, we were greeted by a characteristic, cool gust of air, completely different from the surface. As we descended deeper, we made our way down long wooden staircases leading to the first chambers. The walls were impressive, raw, jagged layers of salt forming natural patterns that resembled giant silvery tree rings. We kept stopping to take photos and to try and grasp the sheer scale of the space. The mine is so vast that in some areas you truly feel like an ant. The main chamber naturally made the strongest impression, the one that looks like a set straight out of a science fiction film. An immense space, with futuristic structures bathed in bright lighting at its center, creating an utterly unique atmosphere. There was a huge elevator that transported visitors down, and wooden staircases that led up to the very platforms. Down below, there was something you absolutely don't expect to find in a mine. A small underground lake that you could row boats on. It looked surreal. A black mirror of water surrounded by massive salt walls, with only faint lights reflecting off the surface. Around it, there were also spots for mini golf, a small stage, and benches where visitors could rest. Every corner was unique. Some chambers vast and monumental, others narrow and atmospheric, with subtle lighting highlighting the intricate salt formations. Exploring the mine took us quite some time, because here you really cannot rush. The place forces you to pause, look upwards, and appreciate the incredible amount of work that went into centuries of salt extraction. At the same time, it shows how beautifully the Romanians have transformed the mine into an extraordinary attraction. By the time we emerged back to the surface, the rain had nearly stopped, and the road ahead awaited us. Yet, Salina Turda was undoubtedly one of those stops on the journey that lingers in your memory, a place that never lets you stop marveling, not even for a moment. Unfortunately, we rode the entire way to Alba Iulia in the rain, arriving tired and soaked. We immediately booked accommodation through Booking, and after a quick unpack, we set out to find something to eat. We came across a great pizzeria, where we ordered delicious pizza and cold Romanian beer, the perfect end to a wet and intense day. The next day, one of the most anticipated highlights of the entire journey awaited us. The famous Transalpina. From the very first kilometers, the route was breathtaking. Wide curves, smooth asphalt, and ever more stunning mountain views made the ride simply fantastic. Everything was going perfectly until we reached the Oradea Dam on the Sebeș River. The spot turned out to be popular with motorcyclists. There were plenty of bikes and many people taking photos. The views were truly incredible, so we also stopped for a short break. Unfortunately, just beyond the Oradea Dam, the weather began to deteriorate rapidly. Dark clouds rolled in, and before long, the rain started falling. It was a clear sign that the ride ahead wouldn't be easy, yet the route was only beginning to reveal its next face. The higher we climbed from the dam, the more the weather seemed to offer a glimmer of hope. The rain gradually eased, the clouds parted like a curtain, and bright streaks of light broke through. It looked as if the closer we got to the summit, the greater the chance that the Transalpina would reveal its most breathtaking side. The stretch from the dam up to about halfway up the incline was truly exceptional. The wide road meandered gently along the mountain slopes, winding first through dense forests where the asphalt cut through a green tunnel of trees, and moments later opening onto valleys and switchbacks that let you fully feel the joy of motorcycling. The views, though not yet fully revealed, hinted that higher up the scenery could be absolutely spectacular. Along the way, we encountered many motorcyclists, some riding alone, others in larger groups. Some waved as they passed, others took short breaks for photos, or simply soaked in the atmosphere of this legendary road. You could feel that this was a place attracting two-wheeled enthusiasts from across Europe. Unfortunately, by the time we reached roughly halfway up the climb, hope began to fade. Suddenly, as if someone had poured it from a giant cauldron, a dense fog appeared. Within minutes, it swallowed everything. The mountains, the curbs, the landscapes, even the motorcyclists riding ahead of us. Visibility dropped drastically, and the breathtaking views of the Transalpina became something we could only dream of. The fog took away what we had been most looking forward to on this stretch. Yet at the same time, it created an entirely different, raw, and mysterious atmosphere. One thing was certain. On that day, the Transalpina had no intention of showing its sunny side. As we descended from the Transalpina, the fog began to gradually lift. First, individual outlines of trees appeared, then entire sections of the landscape, until finally we could see the road and mountains in all their glory once again. The air grew warmer, the asphalt drier, and the closer we got to the valleys, the more normal visibility returned. Before long, we were able to enjoy riding in good weather again. Knowing that another major highlight of the journey awaited us, we decided to head towards the famous Transfagarasan. It was one of the most anticipated roads of the entire trip, so we wanted to get as close to its start as possible before the day ended. Along the way, we had to take care of our motorcycles. After the rain, fog, and hundreds of kilometers, the chains were begging for lubrication. So we stopped for a quick roadside service. Everyone took out their oils, the center stands went down, and the bikes got a little attention they definitely deserved. The next step was finding accommodation. We wanted to stay as close as possible to the southern entrance of the Transfagarasan, so we could set off first thing in the morning. We managed to find a pleasant spot in the small village of Oradea, near Curtea de Argeș, the town just before the start of the route from the southern side. It was the perfect base to rest before the next big adventure. The following day, we would face the road that many motorcyclists consider the most beautiful in all of Romania. The accommodation in Oradea far exceeded our expectations. The host led us to the upper floor of the house, and it turned out we had the entire floor to ourselves. Spacious, clean, and perfect for resting after a long day on the motorcycles. In front of the house there was a covered area for grilling, which immediately looked like the perfect setting for a relaxed evening. And indeed, the host proved to be incredibly hospitable. He prepared a delicious grilled dinner for us, with aromas that made our mouths water instantly. On top of that, he treated us to traditional palinka, which we enjoyed alongside great conversation in a warm and friendly atmosphere. We had planned to take a short evening walk to explore the surroundings, but the host asked us not to leave the property after dark. The area was close to the forest, and those parts are known for bear sightings, with the animals sometimes venturing near homes at night. We took his advice very seriously and stayed safely on the premises. The evening was truly enjoyable. Delicious food, palinka, incredible hospitality, and a wonderful atmosphere. A perfect end to the day before the next stage of our journey. In the morning, after a great evening and a wonderful night's stay, we packed up and got our motorcycles ready for the next stage of the journey. One of Romania's most famous roads awaited us, the Transfagarasan. From the very first kilometers, the route was impressive. Wide curves, tunnels carved into the rock, dense forests, and views that practically begged you to stop. It was no surprise that we paused several times to take photos and simply soak in the surroundings. Every stop revealed new perspectives: forests, valleys, snow-capped peaks in the distance, and the road twisting elegantly through it all. Eventually, we reached the impressive dam at Lake Vidraru. It is a massive concrete structure that makes a powerful impression, especially when you stand on its crest and look down below. There were plenty of tourists there, and above all, many motorcyclists who, just like us, had stopped to capture the place in photographs. Along the way, we also encountered what many motorcyclists talk about after traveling through Romania: bears by the roadside. They stood calmly, as if accustomed to passing cars and motorcycles. Yet seeing these powerful animals up close was deeply impressive and commanded real respect. It was a moment that stays with you for a long time. Along the way, We also encountered what many motorcyclists talk about after traveling through Romania, bears by the roadside. They stood calmly, as if accustomed to passing cars and cycles. Yet seeing these powerful animals up close was deeply impressive. Additionally, along the way we saw the police escorting groups of cyclists riding the Transfagarasan. With so much wildlife around and such changeable weather, safety was clearly taken very seriously here. It only added to the overall impression of the route. Beautiful, wild, and at times, highly demanding. The road to Vidraru was filled with emotion, breathtaking views, and moments that linger in the memory. And this was only the beginning of the Transfagarasan. After a short stop at the Vidraru Dam, we continued towards the highest point of the Transfagarasan. The road began to climb steadily, with the bends becoming tighter and more technical. With every kilometer, it was clear that this was no ordinary mountain route, but a road with real character, demanding at times, yet offering immense satisfaction in return. The road was built in the 1970s on the orders of Nicolae Ceausescu, primarily for strategic and military reasons. Its purpose was to allow the rapid movement of troops across the Carpathians in the event of a threat. Construction was extremely challenging, carried out in harsh mountain conditions and often involving the use of explosives. Sadly, many workers lost their lives during its creation, a fact remembered today through local stories and information boards along the route. The higher we climbed, the more rugged the landscape became. Forests gradually gave way to rocky slopes, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Long tunnels carved directly into the rock began to appear, followed by more serpentines, from which sweeping views opened up over valleys hundreds of meters below. An interesting fact is that the Transfagarasan is closed for a large part of the year due to snow and harsh weather conditions. Even in summer, the weather here can change within minutes, something we had already experienced ourselves. The highest point of the route lies at over 2,000 meters above sea level, near the Balea tunnel, and that was exactly where we were heading. This section of the road was the pure essence of a motorcycling adventure. History, wild nature, technical riding, and the awareness that we were traveling along one of the most extraordinary roads in Europe. As we approached the summit of the Transfagarasan, traffic grew heavier and heavier. At the very top, and in its immediate surroundings, there were countless stalls, selling food, souvenirs, cheeses, honey, and just about anything that could be offered to mountain tourists. The place felt more like a mountain fair than a scenic viewpoint, at over 2,000 meters above sea level. The problem was that along with the stalls came crowds of cars. Many drivers tried to park literally anywhere, by the roadside, on bends, even on the shoulders. This quickly led to congestion, and at times traffic came almost to a standstill. On a motorcycle, it was still possible to squeeze through, but it required a great deal of caution. On the northern side, even before reaching the summit itself, the situation was worse still. There, truly massive traffic jams formed. Long lines of cars barely moving at all. This is exactly where the most iconic photographs of the Transfagarasan are taken. The road winding like a ribbon across the mountain slopes. Heated cars, engines idling, tourists stepping out to take photos. Complete chaos. Looking at it all, it was hard to believe that this was one of Europe's most famous mountain roads. The contrast was striking. On one hand, magnificent mountains and a legendary route, and on the other, overwhelming crowds and near-total traffic paralysis. It was the moment when we were truly glad to be on motorcycles, because only thanks to that could we thread our way through the madness and continue onward. As we descended the Transfagarasan, it quickly became clear that the traffic jams were beginning to fade away. The flow grew smoother, and the road finally allowed us to enjoy exactly what we had come for. The riding was outstanding. Perfectly shaped bends, good surface quality, and a rhythm of serpentines that delivered pure joy with every passing kilometre. The lower we went, the better the conditions became. It was one of those moments when you forget about fatigue entirely and simply ride, absorbing the road and the scenery. We headed towards the village of Karca, where, at one of the fuel stations, it was time to part ways with Zbyszek. For him, it was time to head back home. His route was different, his time limited. After a short stop, a handshake, and a few farewell words, each of us set off in our own direction. As for us, now just the two of us, Mariusz and I, we fired up the bikes and rode on. The adventure was far from over, with more kilometers ahead, new countries to cross, and more legendary roads still waiting to be discovered.